Go sit down. Good evening and welcome to the Township Council meeting for November 14th. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting was provided on December 21st, 2023 by sending written notice and electronic notice to the Courier News and the Breeze, posting on the website and the bulletin board in the municipal building, and filing with the Township Clerk. If I could ask the clerk for roll call, please.
Councilman Kirsch?
Here.
Councilman Cordilla?
Here.
Councilman Nogales? Here. Councilman Pedroso? President Ring.
Here. If you're able, I would ask you to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask Councilman Nogales to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have regular session for October 24th for approval. Minutes?
I had one inclusion, but I'll approve the minutes as adjusted.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Approving of the minutes, yes or no?
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
President Ring.
Yes. All right, we'll start the Township Council reports. I will start with Councilman Nogales.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attended along with Mayor Mensch the ribbon cutting at the J. Crew location on Chimney Rock, right next to Talbot's. Also attended the ribbon cutting at the new Summit Health Center in the former Crate and Barrel, retrofitted from medical offices. Other attendees included Mayor Mensch and Councilman Kirsch and Pedroso. Now, just an item. Many people say, gee, you report on all these things, but do you really do them? So I want to show proof that we did go to the Summit Medical ribbon cutting earlier. I spoke at the rededication of the Gulf War monument on the north lawn of the municipal building. The internal plaque, which was severely weathered, and it was replaced in time for Veterans Day. The Somerset County 200 Club meeting was held this week. The organization continues to recognize the selfless dedication of our police and volunteer fire and rescue departments. Strict water conservation measures were announced by the state to protect this precious resource due to the extreme drought. All outside burning of any nature are prohibited. Attended several township meetings dealing with stormwater management as well as sewer utility items. It is important that the public fully understand that the sewer utility, which is billed directly as a utility, just like your electric, gas, telephone, cable, or garbage collection. Earlier today, Councilman Kirsch and I, along with SRVSA Commissioners Albano and Lafari, toured the sewerage utility-owned Middlebrook Pumping Station on Chimney Rock Road. This station, originally built in 1985, is badly in need of updating to include new pumps and electronics, as well as building improvements. We also toured what is really the newly refurbished station on Gilbride Road, which was built in 1965. It is still a work in progress. RWJ Somerset has just gone through a 2-floor surgical care addition. I attended the rededication last night. Developer Jack Morris donated $1 million, and Josh and Rachel Califer donated $400,000, bringing the Califer total for this project to $3.5 million. Grace earlier, our clerk in the package, handed out the schedule for 2025. I would ask everyone to go over to make sure that the council dates don't conflict with any important social or religious endeavors. The 2025 reorganization will be held on Thursday, January 2nd at 7 o'clock. It's important. The regular council always begins at 7:30, but reorg is always at 7 o'clock. That is my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kirsch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Back on October 25th, attended along with some others the Basilone Field, the high school football field rededication. The following day, October 26th, I helped to kick off and also present awards at the Summer Strong 5K, 10K over at Duke Island Park. My work was only partially completed, though, because one Chris Corsini left before he received his medal. And I'm going to sufficiently embarrass him because he won the 10K designation for his age group. And I'll leave it to him whether or not he wants to admit what that age group is.
Not pretty.
Well, it's not that bad.
Prettier than some.
There were others in much older categories. So there you go, Mr. Corsini. All right. On October 28th, I had the chance to meet Speaker Mike Johnson. I just acknowledge that because he is second in line of succession to the presidency after the vice president, of course. October 30th, we had a very successful Halloween event here in our parking lot and surrounding area. It was a combination of our, what I guess is typically Halloween, along with the rained out National Night Out. Thank you. Was very successful. Was certainly, I think, a very proud moment for Bridgewater. Certainly outstanding execution by our staff. I don't know if we can commit to trying to do a blowout like that every year, but it was certainly very nice to have it this year. On November 2nd, attended two Diwali celebrations. The first was at the mall. Certainly, it deserves noting that we have an outstanding partnership with the mall for important community events such as this. It was very well attended. And then that evening at the Hindu Temple and Cultural Center, they also had a Diwali program that I was happy to participate in. Following that, November 5th was Election Day. And I want to just acknowledge that we had quite a successful operation here in Bridgewater, which is no small feat. We have 36 locations, 36 voting districts, 36 machines across 12 different locations, led by the effort led by our clerk, Grace Jaguna. She's provided a very detailed report. Things weren't perfect. There were some machines that were briefly down, needed to be rebooted. There were some challenges with the poll books, the electronic poll books. But by and large, it was a very successful day. And I'll also add that the early voting that occurred in this room was robust and also very successful. And I haven't seen final numbers, but it seems like the turnout was quite strong. So whatever channel people chose to vote in by mail early or on Election Day, certainly seems like the Bridgewater and surrounding community was well engaged with this year's election. I do want to call out a few individuals who were particularly critical in the Election Day operation. From Public Works, Brian Soden, Curtis Saffold, Kevin Choi, and Adrian Garrow. Some others in the building, Lauren Vitti from Engineering, Patty Bueno from Administration, Vilma Day from Health, Shalini Rajmani from HR, and then, of course, our clerk staff, which is led by Grace and also includes Ali Gust, Natalie Troiso, and Juliana Coelho. And, of course, Jamie Edwards, our OEM coordinator, was also engaged that day. On Veterans Day, I had the privilege of representing the mayor, council, and our community at the American Legion in Bradley Gardens. I gave brief comments, and that was a meaningful ceremony again this year. It was mentioned that on November 12th, there was a ribbon cutting at Sub and Health. I was there. Also on November 12th, there was a zoning board meeting. They continued the application for the property adjacent to the JCC along 202-206. There have been no planning board meetings in the intervening time since our last meeting. And then today, as was noted, was a pump station touring. So I don't know, do we have a shot at that? So, we talked about proof that we do things. So on the left side, I only had a picture of the dedication plaque from the Middlebrook Pumping Station, but then I thought to take an actual photograph with Councilman Norgalis over at Gilbride. And the reason why this is meaningful is that this is a serious operation. Obviously, we have and we do commit a substantial amount of money, and our residents rely on this utility very, very much each and every day. And I guess that photo is after Howard and I went all the way to the bottom and made it all the way back up to the top, which is, I don't know, probably 50, 60 feet underground, 60 feet underground. So I've earned my two stripes as a council member by going into both pumping stations. And I'm certainly happy to be enhancing my knowledge, because it is such a critical part of our government operation, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councilman Cardillo.
This is garbage.
Okay, I'd just like to say on Veterans Day, I was at Chimney Rock Park to participate in Veterans Day programming with VFW Post 6588 out of Martinsville. And I also attended 2 emergency service meetings related to the use of drone technology for our first responders and emergency responders. And in the coming weeks, there will be more to be added to that. I attended the dedication of Flannery Field with ex-Mayor Flannery, and it was just a nice thing to do for her work in setting up the municipal building and the properties all around. And also, I attended the dedication of the John Basilone Field new monument, and certainly kudos to the Board of Ed for getting all that put together to certainly honor a hero from the Bridgewater Raritan community, John Basilone. That's all that I have.
Thank you. Councilman Pedroso.
Thank you, sir. First of all, good evening. It's nice to see so many faces here in our courtroom, in our chambers today. I don't feel so alone. Thanks for being here. Just a couple of things I want to highlight. I attended many of the things that have been mentioned. Just want to highlight a few things. I did attend the Flannery Field dedication ceremony. Mayor Flannery was the first woman mayor of Bridgewater Township. And it was also certainly this administration building and the fields are really her vision. And so it was very fitting that the fields were dedicated to Mayor Flannery. Also, belated, hope everyone enjoyed a happy Veterans Day. Just want to publicly thank all the men and women that have served and continue to serve our military here and abroad. Certainly appreciate their service, and I'm sure we all do. First time I coached a soccer team, or in fact, coached period this season. And so I had the honor of coaching our first grade soccer team. And so, Mr. Pappas, I saw firsthand what a great job you do and the recreation department does really at managing and overseeing thousands of athletes here in the township, and overseeing certainly a complex management of various sports and activities. And I can tell you it was a great experience. It was very well run. I enjoyed my interactions with the rec department. I certainly enjoyed the time I had coaching. If anyone gets a chance to ever do that, I highly recommend it. I thought it was just a great time. It was very rewarding to see the kids progress and having a little part in it. Hope everyone enjoyed a great Halloween. I know I did. I have little kids, so we did plenty of trick-or-treating. Both my kids donate most of the candy they collect, but nonetheless, it was still fun. I attended the Crim School trunk-or-treat event. In fact, we had a trunk at the school, so that was a fun experience. And I also came by and saw the town's event. Again, Mr. Pappas, a phenomenal job. That event seems to be growing every year. Certainly, I've seen it from the first time till now, and it's really booming, and it's just so lively and exciting, and just very well managed. So congratulations on a great job that you and your team do. And lastly, I attended the Diwali event at the temple. I appreciate their invitation. It was quite an experience. I took my wife and my two little kids to go. I always like to take my kids to different cultural experiences and have them exposed to different cultures and things. And it was a really great time, and I appreciate the hospitality of everyone there. They gave us a tour of the temple. We got to learn a little more about their religion and culture, and I'm just really happy that I had a chance to participate and be part of their festivities. So certainly happy Diwali to those that celebrated, belated. So that's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. For my council report, I just have a couple items. I recently attended the grand opening of the and ribbon cutting of the Liquor Cave liquor store located at the Circle Shopping Center. I also joined Councilman Kirsch at the American Legion Hall in Bradley Gardens for their Veterans Day celebration earlier this year. And then earlier this evening, I attended the 5th anniversary celebration of the Bridgewater Lifestyle magazine, which I think many have come to be familiar with. They celebrated their 5th anniversary earlier today, and on behalf of the administration, presented them with a proclamation. And I just want to also, I know Councilman Kirsch spoke quite a bit about the election, extend my thank you to all those that were involved in it. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's 14 hours of voting. However, that doesn't mean they come in at 6 a.m. They're here 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, Grace? What time did you go home?
About 11.
11 p.m. It's a long day. And it's an important day for our country and everyone who runs. Running for public office, win or lose, is not an easy process. And we do have someone here sitting in the room tonight who recently ran for the Board of Education re-election. Extend my congratulations to Jennifer. But anyone that runs for office, they put in time and energy, and it's a lengthy, long process. And election day is a lengthy, long process for our staff. So I just want to extend my personal thank you to you and your staff and everyone involved. That's my report.
Mr. President, just one item, since we do have a few people in the room. Hopefully this would be meaningful. There is an upcoming fundraiser tomorrow night to benefit the Somerset Regional Animal Shelter, an evening of laughter. The suggested donation is $45. And so for anybody who's interested, please, go to the animal shelter's website for that information. I'll be there with my wife. It's certainly a wonderful cause, and hopefully it'll be a fun and funny night out.
Thank you. Anything from the administration?
Yes, just a couple of things. I want to acknowledge and staff, recreation staff, public works staff, Chief Mitzek, and the police department for the Halloween festival / postponed National Night Out. It was a wonderful event. We estimate over 3,000 people probably attended it, and the weather helped tremendously.
Yeah.
The other is there are 2 upcoming holiday celebrations that the township is sponsoring. The first one will be on December the 4th at 6 p.m. in the courtyard, would be the annual Christmas tree lighting. And December 26th in the courtyard, the menorah lighting. So more information will be forthcoming. That's all that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We do have 2 proclamations this evening. Unfortunately, the mayor could not be here. The first one is on breast cancer awareness, and I know that's something near and dear to Councilman Norgalis. I've asked him if he would present.
So we changed the proclamation so it could be done today. Whereas in 2024, it is projected that more than 298,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed in the United States. And whereas over 43,000 Americans are expected to lose their lives to breast cancer this year. And whereas despite these heartbreaking numbers, the nation celebrates the fact that from 1989 to 2022, breast cancer mortality rates have decreased by over 43%. Whereas this decline in death represents more than 431,000 women who have survived breast cancer, women who might not have made it without progress in medical science and support systems. And whereas the lives saved are a testament to the unwavering dedication for research, improved treatments, increased awareness, and vital support systems led by organizations like Dance for the Cure. And whereas Dance for the Cure, an entirely volunteer-driven organization, continues to assist breast cancer patients within Somerset, Hunterdon, and Middlesex counties, and compassion and dedication. Whereas Dance for the Cure has contributed over $1 million in direct financial assistance to individuals in these counties and in their courageous battles against breast cancer. And whereas Bridgewater resident Brooke Kurtz, along with Bridgewater Raritan High School cheer team, ladies and gentlemen here today, partners with Dance for the Cure Ribbons of Hope campaign to adorn the Bridgewater Municipal Complex with pink bows, and whereas these pink bows stand as enduring symbols of hope for current fighters, expressions of solidarity from the community, tributes to those we've lost, and triumphs for those who have conquered evil. And therefore, I, Matthew C. Mensch of Bridgewater Township, along with the Bridgewater Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October as National Breast Cancer Awareness, and call upon all residents of the township to honor and support Dance for the Cure, as well as others critical initiatives throughout the county. Furthermore, I commend the exceptional efforts of Brooke Kurtz and the Bridgewater Raritan High School cheer team for raising awareness and providing vital encouragement to individuals battling breast cancer within our community and beyond. I therefore present this proclamation to you ladies with thanks from a grateful town and the Bridgewater town, and especially from me, and thank you for the help. Now, I'd like each of you to come up and give your name, and say your name, full name, please, first to last, you know how to spell, and then say what school you're associated with. Okay? We can start right over here.
I'm also a senior at Bridgewater High School. I'm Haley Villerman, and I'm a senior at Bridgewater High School.
I'm Jeannie Farnia. I'm the coach of the cheer team at Bridgewater Raritan High School. I do not attend anymore.
I'm obviously not in high school. I'm Kathleen Cirioli, and I'm the co-founder of Dance for the Cure, and I'm a 3-time primary cancer survivor.
I'm Brooke Herbst. I am a graduate of Bridgewater Raritan High School West. I am a breast cancer survivor of 11 years.
I'm Breland Myers, a senior at Bridgewater Raritan High School.
I'm Serena Grasso, and I'm a sophomore at Bridgewater Raritan High School.
I'm Sophia Pellegrino, and I'm a junior at Bridgewater Raritan High School. I'm Grace Donato, and I'm a sophomore at Bridgewater Raritan High School.
I'm Diana Berliner, and I'm a sophomore at Bridgewater Raritan High School.
Ladies, we salute you. Thank you so very much. And whatever she tells us to do, we have to do.
Do you want to actually just stay here? I'm gonna, rather than going back up and coming down, I'm gonna, or did you have something else?
You're on.
Okay.
I'm just going to stand on this.
Okay. So we do have another proclamation this evening. I'm going to ask Bonnie Lapata and her family if they'd like to come up. If you prefer not to, you don't have to, but you are more than welcome to. I learned something new tonight, that Bonnie actually used to work for the township. So I guess you've spent many of times in this room, but here for a different reason tonight. Emil Lapata passed away on June 12th, 2024, survived by his loving wife Bonnie, along with 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. And whereas Emil, a resident of Bridgewater for over 40 years, dedicated himself to a life of service, joining Bridgewater Police Department's traffic division as a school crossing guard, serving with great devotion and compassion for nearly 2 decades as a crossing guard. And whereas Emil selflessly protected and guided our community's children, endearingly called them my kids, and ensuring the safe passage of countless students at Van Holten School with vigilance, care, and kindness of a loving grandfather. And whereas Emil's warm smile, friendly nature, and lasting bonds with the families made him a beloved figure known to many as the grandfather of Stony Brook, embodying the values of loyalty, humility, and humor that enriched the lives of those around him. And whereas Emil's commitment to public safety inspired both the children, parents, and families of Stony Brook, who look for ways to mirror Emil's dedication and compassion in their own lives. And whereas Emil's legacy of dedication, rooted in a deep appreciation for freedom and community, will forever remain an inspiration to Bridgewater Township. He demonstrated unwavering pride in his work, a willingness to lend a hand, and a love for his country and family. Now, therefore, I, Matthew C. Mensch, Mayor of Bridgewater Township, along with the Bridgewater Township Council, do hereby proclaim the crosswalk located on Stony Brook Drive as Emil's Crossing. In honor of his steadfast service, his exemplary character, and his positive impact on the lives of our children and community members, Emil Lapata's contributions will be cherished, and his memory will be a guiding light for all who knew him. So on behalf of the township, thank you for allowing him to serve for 20 years with us. We will be arranging the erection of a sign to commemorate Emil's Crossing. We will certainly let you guys know ahead of time and invite you to attend. But on behalf of the township, I present that to you.
Bonnie, don't go away.
The next item for business is to open the meeting to the public. I will take a motion to open the meeting to the public.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So, going to open the meeting to the public tonight, going to, as council president, make a slight change to what has been a long-time policy of this governing body. We're going to allow members of the public wishing to address the council on any matter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak unless there's unusual circumstances. As you approach the 3-minute mark, I will let you know you're coming near your time and ask you to wrap up before you would, your time is up and would be cut off. So with that, the meeting is open to the public. Anyone that would like to comment is welcome to come forward. Just state your name and address. If you're not comfortable stating your address, you can write it on the sheet there. Thank you.
Hello.
And I'm going to also just ask my fellow council members, in the interest of allowing the public to speak, if we could try to refrain from commenting during their time period. Thank you.
I would appreciate feedback if you guys could. Deanna Nye, 671 Country Club Road. First, I am wondering if the town will consider picking up brush on the side of the road since we cannot burn, even in our fireplaces. I have a lot of standing stuff that I need to get rid of fairly quick. The second topic, another accident tonight. This time it took out trees. One person was taken away in an ambulance. The other did actually walk away with her loved one and got into a car. I am asking, I voted for many of you to come sit in my driveway for an hour.
Sorry, ma'am, we need to keep the door open in order to be compliant with open public. Yep, no, I understand. I apologize.
Come sit in my driveway, have a cup of coffee with me, sit on my porch for an hour, and you will see all the people flying by, all the people blowing through the stop sign. Something needs to give. My kids don't play in my front yard. My new neighbors have little kids. If that tree was not there tonight, that car would have ended up in their living room. I'm asking again, we need to do something about that intersection. People don't stop for a stop sign. I don't know why everybody's in a hurry, but maybe even though lights would be blinking into my windows, I want a blinking light, red light, with cameras. because it's just getting to be too much. Every bang is alarming. So please, feel free, email me, come sit with me. You will see it. It's not BS. I have tonight's accident on my camera system again. Person blew the stop sign because they were in a hurry. And meanwhile, older lady is at the hospital. 2 firemen almost got ran over because people were trying to go around. An officer almost got ran over tonight, twice, because people are in a hurry on that drag strip that I live on. So, thank you.
What street you live on?
Country Club.
Where at?
Intersection of Town Meeting.
Hi, good evening. Jen Lochran. I will confirm that that intersection is very, very scary. I have seen a lot of things. We had that other accident that took the pole out. The pole's completely cracked in half. They didn't even take the pole out. They just attached another pole to it. Personally, I've had people blow through that stoplight with my kids in the car. I've skateboarded down that street many times. People will be looking at their phones. I can see them through the window looking at their phones, blowing through that stoplight. So I definitely agree with Deanna that it's a treacherous intersection. But I came here today to thank Bridgewater Township Police Department, all the first responders, administration, and the Department of Recreation, and also the Department of Public Works for everything they did to put together the combined Halloween and National Night Out event. We were invited to attend last year for National Night Out, and we were grandfathered in this year, and I can tell you that I'm so happy that we participated. I was not expecting the Department of Public Works to drop off all our ramps. So at the very last minute, we had 6 police officers helping us try to set up, and it turned out to be an incredible opportunity for a lot of kids. We must have taught at least 70, 80 kids how to ride a skateboard, how to do it safely. I had a uniform that said helmet police, and we enforced the safety. So it was just a really incredible opportunity to be a part of the community. I handed out Build a Skate Park stickers to all the first responders, and it was fantastic. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And also, amazing effort on behalf of your staff for the election. I have never seen anything like early voting that happened this year. It was really quite incredible. So thank you for that effort. Have a good night.
Jane Gandalf, 2000 Washington Valley Road. I'm here with 2 hats. First, the Martinsville Community Center to thank you for inviting us to the Halloween National Night Out. It really was a huge success. Well attended, extremely well organized, so thank you. My other hat is Friends of Bridgewater History, and I want to thank Mike Pappas and the DPW team for allowing us to set up our displays at the house on Milltown Road, the Lane Voorhees Brocar House. It was a huge success. It was a 2-day-long event, Saturday and Sunday. We had 79 visitors. I did bring a little flyer that you guys can look at.
Thank you.
We had a lot of people ask when the house is going to be open. I know there are a couple of grants that Bridgewater has received, and we would love to see those put to use to start restoring the house. I do want to call out Dickie Shimp and Brian Sowden. I think that's how you say his last name. They did an exceptional job in getting the grounds ready for us to be able to display our tents and stuff. I was sorry that I didn't see anybody from Bridgewater. We had county people. I think Mr. Corsini attended. It was a very nice event. Thank you. Thank you. So my last thing, and it's just a general resident, Camp Cromwell. I'm wondering how things are progressing. On December 7th, 2023, I came to a meeting and there was approval for a final payment to Earthworks, At the time, I was told the camp would be open for hiking in a month or two. It's now almost a year later, and I'd like some feedback on what's happening. That was it. Anybody have any feedback, or can you share anything?
We continue to address hazardous conditions on the site. There has been progress over the course of the year, a bit slower. Some of it was due to resource issues. We've been able to get some local businesses assist and address some of the hazardous conditions and some volunteers. We hope over the next few months to actually make a presentation to the council, so I'll let you know when that happens in advance.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Good evening. I'm almost afraid to move the mic that it won't keep working. Kathy Franco, 766 Weemac Road. Let me start with a question. Will there be a separate open mic for the introduction of the ordinance, number 11?
No. There would be a public hearing on the ordinance at our next meeting, assume it's successfully introduced.
Okay, all right. As always, I will begin by begging your pardon. I appreciate the 3-minute limit. However, I will attempt to keep my comments limited to much less than that for each of the items. First, I'd like to thank the police department for posting how to report the theft of political signs, which were stolen this election season, and how to attempt to protect this personal property of these homeowners. Also, as Jennifer Loughran said, I thought the police department and all of the local agencies did a wonderful job on the National Night Out event. I'd like to thank the clerk's office for running a smooth election, both during the early voting and on election day. Mr. Pappas, apparently you did receive the 2 emails I sent related to the calendar not reflecting recognized holidays at the time that I sent them, and that the offices are closed during those times. The calendar now does reflect this. However, you did not recognize my request to remind residents of the drop-dead date for the quarterly tax payments. You also neglected to acknowledge or respond that you received my email. I found that inappropriate. Let's see. Moving on to 12A. I'm sorry. No, let's start with 11. Ordinance number 11, I know you're going to be introducing it. The budget that was approved for 2024 had $115,568.75. You're now proposing in this ordinance $126,194 for the position of municipal judge. You're also proposing a court administrator's increase from the budgeted amount of $93,768.28 to $95,701. I'm wondering where that money will be taken from. Our budget has imploded as far as taxpayers paying additional funds. So where are you going to take money away from to support this increase for these 2 individuals in this change in the ordinance? I'm hoping that you have that answer when you have the public hearing next time. Also, if you have responses to me, I would appreciate it, as would I think anybody else who comes to this podium, that you answer these questions when we're here, that you don't let us walk back to our seats, attempt to close public hearing, and then attempt to answer them without giving us the opportunity to either ask additional questions or to rebut your statements. Because I will let you know, come back up to this mic if you attempt to answer my questions after I've left.
I would ask you to just summarize your comments, please.
You can ask me, but it doesn't mean that, as I said, you have a number of items on your agenda. And I will keep each of my comments and each of your agenda items to less than even the 2-minute limit. Okay, 12A is a resolution about making the area in need of redevelopment. And let me start with on the agenda, you give the street address, you give the block and lot numbers. I'm sorry, in my over 35 years of living in this township, I never knew.
Ms. Franco. Ms. Franco, would you please? Ms. Franco, please.
And I don't think other residents are aware of that.
Thank you.
No, it's not offensive, it's that you're cutting
Ms.
me
Franco,
off.
could you please?
No, I will not sit down.
Ms. Franco, please.
Also, you claim that there was a public hearing at the planning board meeting. At the public hearing, it was
Ms. Franco,
limited
please.
to 2 minutes per resident, and then the town planning attorney kept telling residents that it was not the appropriate time for them to comment.
Ms. Franco, there's someone else that would like to speak.
Then I will let them speak. and
Thank you.
then I will come back.
Hi.
Hi.
Jessica Gallico, lifelong resident of Branchburg, new resident of White House Station. I just wanted to thank the board for the beautiful proclamation tonight for Emil Lapata. He was like a big grandpa and uncle to me, and you guys did it good. Bridgewater always does it classy, so thank you once again.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak that has not spoken? Please, sir, come on up.
Good evening, Andrew Bucko, 543 Berrywood Lane. I'm going to provide some comments on items on the agenda, and then if time allots, some items that are not on the agenda. First of all, item 12A, the redevelopment plan. I would hope that, and I understand that this is just the first step in creating a plan, but that this plan includes new housing. If we want the next generation of Bridgewater residents to be able to afford to live in this town, we need more housing. It's just a matter of supply and demand. There is a demand to live in Bridgewater, and there's limited supply, and that has driven up the price of housing to unaffordable levels for many who are especially starting out their lives. The mayor, who is not here tonight, killed the plan to build housing on the Center of Excellence location, cost the township a lot of money to back out of the agreement that was already made with the developer, and instead we're going to get a warehouse. I hope to heck we don't get another warehouse on the former Ethicon site, because that is not something that this township needs. We need housing. Second, 12F. This is shifting a lot of money around, and I'm wondering why. We're taking $144,000 from the streets and roads account. I don't know if you've looked at the roads in Bridgewater, but they could use a little help. They could use $144,000 worth of help, and probably a whole lot more. And even the roads that were just recently redone are already starting to deteriorate. Secondly, some of that money is going to go towards bond interest. I don't know, was this not anticipated when the budget was made? $115,000 to the Improvement Authority, $34,000 to general vague professional services. I would like to have a breakdown of where that money is actually going. Thirdly, 12G. The resolution says that the unused money from the sewer fund will be returned to each respective capital improvement fund or credited to surplus. Which is it? Is it going to go back to the improvement fund, or is it going to go into a slush fund to just fill in holes in the budget? That should be made clear before this is considered by this council. And finally, in the past 2 weeks, Bridgewater experienced yet another disruptive water main break from the local utility, New Jersey American Water Company. Now, granted, I have only lived in Bridgewater for about 8 years, but in that time,
we have experienced more boil water advisories or complete outages of water than anywhere else that I've lived in New Jersey. My question to this council is, what are you doing to hold the water utility accountable for this lack of service? Thank you very much. Good evening.
Anybody else from the public that has not spoken that would like to speak? Ms. Franco, you've already been allotted your time period.
Motion to close public session.
You have a motion?
Because this council is
There's a motion on the table.
We have a motion.
There's a motion on the table.
Your actions are demonstrating that by limiting the.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hey,
Aye.
You know what? I hope that every resident is watching this and remembers that.
Thank you,
there
Ms.
is a
Franco.
recollection of each and every one of you.
Thank you. Next item is 11A, introduction of an ordinance.
Mr. Council President, I just want to say 2 words. I just want to, first of all, acknowledge Ms. Loughran's event on Halloween. It was a phenomenal event. I walked by it several times. There are always kids on skateboards and doing great stuff, and it's phenomenal. Thank you for being such a community activist and being so active in our community and doing so much stuff and just trying to make Bridgewater better. I really appreciate that. And I also wanted to acknowledge Ms. Gandolf and all the work you do for Bridgewater and remembering our history. It's super important for me. I got to tell you, I didn't know about this event. I'm really sorry that I missed it. I wish I had known about it. I went through your booklet. It really looks like a phenomenal event. But I wanted to thank you and the friends of Bridgewater for you're all volunteers, and I know that you're trying very hard to preserve Bridgewater's history, and I really appreciate that. And so I just wanted to acknowledge those 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is 11A, introduction of ordinances. We have an ordinance amending ordinance number 24-12 of the Township of Bridgewater, setting the compensation of the mayor, township council, department heads, and certain other municipal employees pursuant to Chapter 374 of the Public Laws of 1985, NJSA 2A:809, NJSA 2A:8-13, NJSA 40A:19-165, NJSA 40A:9-135, NJSA 40A:9-146, and Chapter 95 of the Public Laws of 1996 to amend the salaries of the municipal court judge and the court clerk administrator to reflect the township's shared services agreement for municipal court services with the Borough of Raritan. I think some of you may be aware in the public, earlier this year we entered into a shared services agreement with the Borough of Raritan, where Raritan has discontinued their court operations and now utilize the services of Bridgewater Township. With that, Raritan is paying us for that service, including for the salary of the judges and the court administrator. The increases that are being proposed are a prorated portion of the salaries that the judge was making in Raritan Township to cover the period of October 1st through the end of this year. The shared court took effect October 1st. So this is simply taking the salaries that Raritan was paying the judge that are now paying to us, and us passing that money on to the judge, but it does require an ordinance. And I will say that this is a prorated portion for the last 3 months of the year. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on this, and we would anticipate that we will have to do another one for the full amount for 2025, early in 2025. And I know, as I said, there's been a lot of back and forth. I know Councilman Norgalis would like to say a few words regarding the ordinance. I will afford you the first opportunity. So.
Thank you. Several months ago, we had the salary ordinance for 2024. It included the names of the department heads and had...
I apologize. I guess we should first introduce
Your call.
comment. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It listed by title and salary the payment for department heads, mayor, council, et cetera. At that time, I had raised the issue, as I have numerous times in the past, that I felt that type of presentation was inadequate. I felt in addition to the title, we should have the name of the individual department head listed. At that time, in fact, I thought Mayor Mensch supported that. He said, but we need to move forward at that point. This is several months ago. Let's get this out of the way, and the next time we come up with the salary ordinance, we'll incorporate that. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is the next time. In this document, we have the municipal judge and the court administrator, but we don't list the names. I will support this document. I will support this ordinance if the names are included, but if they are not, I will not. Now, by the way, just so that everybody knows, our municipal judge is Kathleen Howes, and our court administrator is Jenny Peterson. Their names are on our website, so it's not a secret. I don't understand. I have, in several cases, gone back over minutes of years back, and I find titles but no names. And I don't want to be in a position where 5 years from now somebody looks back and says, well, there was a judge and they gave her an increase, but we don't know who it is. So that's my standard at this point, and it will be my standard for every salary ordinance in the future. If the names of the individuals are not included with the title, I will vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just a brief comment. My concern is that the salaries be tied to the incumbents, so that in the event that one of these individuals retires or leaves for some other reason, that we would be able to then work with the successor on an alternate salary. It could be the same, it could be more, it could be less. We are achieving that through, I believe it is Section 4 on this ordinance, so that is a step forward. I will agree that it is my preference to see individuals named. I have been assured that in 2025, names will be named. Again, this is 2024. To name these individuals in the ordinance would be different than what we did earlier this year. But I have been assured that in 2025, including the mayor, the council members, council president, everyone who is part of the salary ordinance, that will be in 2025, and I will hold the administration to that standard. I am satisfied that we have, for the first time, clearly stated the incumbent is required to remain in place in order to qualify for this salary. In the event that for some reason those two incumbents do not, we certainly don't expect that, but in the event that either is no longer the incumbent, then those salaries are no longer valid.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Pappas, is there a reason why the names are not included? Is there some advantage to that in the sense of from a business perspective with a township, or?
The practice has been, up until now, that the title is listed only, not the name.
I think part of it is that from some of the discussions there's been a lot of discussion on this ordinance, but some of that is that we are modifying two, and we would, while I absolutely support what Councilman Norgalis says, we would only have two names in our ordinance because we're not going back to all the other positions that were already approved this year. They're not included in here, so we would only have two names in the ordinance. We wouldn't have all the other officials listed. I think it's something that we should do. Personally, I think it's something we should do when we set the full menu of salaries for 2025. If you remember, our salary ordinance has like 20 positions on it. We have only named two in this version, in this amendment.
Mr. President, my objective remains, I think we're making up excuses to not do what we say we're going to do in the future when we could do it right now.
Any other comments?
I'll make the motion to introduce 11A.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second 11A. Any further comment?
The only comment I agree with Councilman Kirsch to honor the intent of Councilman Norgalis's concern about names being added to the list. We may vote on this tonight and pass this, but I assure you that in 2025 with the ordinance, if names are not there, I will be voting no.
Yeah, just for the record, I don't have an issue with the names not being on this particular ordinance. I think that I wouldn't mind if there were, but I don't have an issue that they're not. I think that just like Councilman Orgales said, this information is readily available by just going on the website and seeing who our judge is and who our court administrators is. I don't think there's any effort by the administration to try to not, I don't know, provide the information. I think it's just the way it's always been done. And if Councilman Orgales has a great suggestion, and I don't have an issue with that either, but I don't think it's worth holding this back for that technical reason at this point, considering it's only 2 people, again, whose information is readily available on the website. And by the way, just to make a note, our court is being run phenomenally. Like our judge is certainly handling the court cases expeditiously in a proper manner, and our court administrator is doing a phenomenal job in handling now multiple courts in our system without a hitch. And so I just also want to note that. But yeah, I'll support the introduction of this ordinance.
Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion, we have a second. I'll take a roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
No.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Ring?
Yes. If you could set public hearing, please.
Yep. Final action for this ordinance is scheduled for December 5th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. here in the municipal courtroom. Public inspection of this ordinance is available on the township website, on the bulletin board, and also available in the clerk's office.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, resolutions. 12A is a resolution designating the property identified as Block 411, Lot 39, also known as 555 Route 22, and Block 408, Lot 67, located on the northwest corner of Route 22 and Country Club Road on the tax map of the Township of Bridgewater as an area in need of redevelopment, non-condemnation pursuant to New Jersey Local Redevelopment and Housing Law, NJSA 40A:12A-1, etc. Mr. Pappas, do you want to?
Thank you. We have Michael Sullivan, who is the township's redevelopment planner, who is here to present what he presented at the planning board meeting, the benefit of the township council. He has one of his associates, and I also want to acknowledge Mr. James Llewellyn, who is also a consultant that the township has engaged, an environmental consultant to address the environmental issues related to this property.
Before we start, I apologize. Oh, there we go. Okay. The screens were out.
So if
they're back up.
Mr. Sullivan could present, that would be in order.
Certainly. Good evening. It's good to be with you. As Mr. Pappas said, I'm Michael Sullivan. I'm the Township Redevelopment Planner. I'm here with my partner, architectural partner, John Hatch, who worked with me on the study. Purpose of tonight's presentation is to update the council on the facts that were presented to the planning board as part of an investigation of an area in need of redevelopment for the Ethicon site at 555 US Route 22. This process began back in the spring, in March, when the governing body, the council, directed the planning board to study the site as an area in need of redevelopment. My office prepared a report known as a preliminary investigation that was dated August 30th of this year. On October 1st, the planning board conducted a public hearing, at which point we presented the information in the investigation. The planning board reviewed that. They asked questions. There was public questions, public comment. And ultimately, on October 1st, based on the report, the testimony, and the public input, the planning board recommended to the governing body, the Township Council, that this area be designated as an area in need of redevelopment. So tonight, we're going to give you the highlights of that presentation.
which is really a summary of the preliminary investigation report, the full report, which is on file with the town. As a reminder, the basis for designating an area in need of redevelopment is within the New Jersey Local Redevelopment and Housing Law. And a redevelopment area is defined as an area in need of redevelopment is an area that needs redevelopment pursuant to criteria within the statute, the Local Redevelopment and Housing Law. And generally, these criteria relate to obsolescent conditions or dilapidation or lack of use or underutilization. And the preliminary investigation really summarizes the existing conditions and the evidence available and compares it to the criteria in order to make a determination or recommendation. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is just to update you. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go through the general aspects of the study area. This is the former Ethicon campus. It's located near the intersection of Country Club Road. Up on the screen you can see there's a location map. It's 555 US Route 22. We've talked about that. And there's also a lot across Country Club Drive, which is a smaller lot. It's block 408, lot 67, which is roughly 2.4 acres, which is vacant. Both lots are owned by the same owner. The current uses of the properties. Let's see, here's an aerial. You can see the properties a little bit better. On the right is the Ethicon campus, and you can see it's largely developed with parking and many buildings, with a green buffer along Route 22. And then the smaller property to the left is Lot 67, which is undeveloped at this time. The existing land use, and this is from the Mod 4 tax data, shows that it's identified as commercial for the Ethicon campus, and the gray color on lot 67 indicates that it is vacant. So let me give you a brief overview of the character of the Ethicon campus. There are 15 buildings or wings, and it's approximately 700,000 square feet. It's an enormous complex. It was previously used for offices, laboratories, and manufacturing of medical devices, needles, and it has employee amenity spaces and other things that you would find in a typical office or manufacturing business. Approximately 60% of the floor area consisted of offices and uses that were ancillary, including a clinic, a cafeteria, a child development center, a fitness center. 40% of the site was, we've calculated, as dedicated to manufacturing, and that's been vacant for quite a while. It was used for research and the development of products. It's been more than 60 years since the first buildings were built there. It's a very old campus. It was first constructed, or the first building was constructed in 1956. And it was designed and redesigned over time as an evolution to really facilitate Ethicon's specialized biomedical research and manufacturing operations. In addition to the buildings and what they represent, there's over 1,300 paved surface parking spaces, a mile of nature paths. There's lighting, an electrical substation, above-ground fuel tanks, generators, and other elements related to environmental contamination, which I'll talk about a little later. But the reason that my partner John is here as an architect is because the nature of these buildings is such that we really felt like it was important to have somebody who understands buildings better than a planner, like me, look at these buildings through the eyes of someone who might want to adaptively reuse them or understand the difficulties in repurposing these buildings. So John has conducted an evaluation of the buildings, and we're going to go through that now so you get a sense of the buildings.
Move that forward. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to walk through briefly each building on the campus. As Michael said, there is a variety of building sizes and types and configurations. All of them were designed very particularly for their original uses, ranging from labs, offices, and a variety of other amenities. The issue with the redevelopment of the site really takes two forms. One is the particular nature of each building and how they were specifically designed for their function, and then the large group of buildings and how they interrelate and interconnect, which also makes the redevelopment difficult. So the first building we're looking at is there in red, is called the Family Center or the Child Development Center. This is one of the more recent buildings on campus, built in 1997 for employee childcare. It's about almost 22,000 square feet. It's a double-loaded corridor that's set up as kind of classrooms. What makes it very particular to its use is virtually every space has plumbing in it for childcare from very young children to toddlers. So there's a variety of room sizes, but they all have sinks and bathrooms and other things associated with childcare, young childcare. The next, this is really a group of buildings, C, D, E, F, and M, all built around the same time. These are among the earliest buildings on the campus, 1956, and these had a range of uses. Offices and labs primarily, some manufacturing. They all have a similar, quite narrow footprint. And you can see they're also double-loaded corridor. All of the buildings on the virtually all of the buildings on the campus are very simple in nature, very utilitarian, very little architectural character. Many of the buildings don't have exterior windows. These buildings happen to have exterior windows because they were used as offices, but their very narrow footprint makes them quite different from how office buildings are built today, which have larger footprints. And so this kind of collection of smaller buildings with a very narrow footprint is unusual for being reused as offices. And again, they were very particularly designed for their office, for that early office and lab use. And here are some of the images on the interior. You can see interior spaces used as lab with all the equipment and plumbing and all of that. The next building, here are a couple of other images. The next building is Building 10, or also called the Old Cafeteria. It was actually built in 1964 as a bomb shelter. This is one of the most unusual buildings on the campus. It is underground. It's made out of poured-in-place reinforced concrete, very designed and built very particularly to its cold. It was built during the Cold War. It was reused later. They managed to find other uses for this very odd building. I can't imagine that they really wanted a cafeteria in this windowless building below grade, but they'd used that for a while until they moved the cafeteria into another building. Building 25 is the clinic or beam building. This was built in 1961. It's a two-story building. It's relatively small, about 8,500 square feet. It houses a medical clinic, doctor's offices, and exam rooms. The east end of the upper floor was converted to an employee health clinic in 2011. The west end is actually below grade because of the slope on the site, and it's connected by a second-story enclosed pedestrian bridge to Wing G. It is, like many of the buildings, very utilitarian, without a lot of, without really any architectural character and almost no windows. Again, a lot of the buildings have concrete exterior walls, uninsulated exterior walls, and few windows.
I would say, other than the blue windows, it doesn't have
Other than the blue windows, right.
doesn't have
Building 30 is also Wing O. This was built in 1969 with later renovations, almost about 99,000 square feet, primarily office space, and about 30% of the basement houses workshops and storage. It's connected to Wing G at the west end and to the ATC building at the north end by a connecting bridge at the third floor. It also, you can see here from the pictures, again, very, very simple, very straightforward. Fair amount of the exterior doesn't have windows. This particular building also has loading docks. Again, very particular to the functions of Ethicon and their manufacturing and their lab and research functions. The next building is Building 40, the Advanced Technology Center, ATC. This was built in 1961, a relatively early building on the site. It's 2 stories, 90,000 square feet, offices and lab space on the top floor, and manufacturing with lab space on the first floor. And so you can see how this had been designed to accommodate those functions. Really bare concrete on the exterior, and the interior, very, very utilitarian, very straightforward construction and design, really for its lab and manufacturing functions. And a very large floor plate, lots of interior space, even if there were windows, without access to daylight. The next building is Building 50, the Learning Institute, Wing G. This is the largest footprint, largest building, one of the first buildings on the campus, 1956. Almost 185,000 square feet of floor area, and contains offices. And this is where a number of some of the amenities on site were located here, including ultimately the cafeteria, but it also includes a manufacturing lab, warehouse space, and other facilities that support the entire campus. A number of renovations, and again, such a large footprint. Most of the exterior walls don't have windows, and such a large footprint that the interior doesn't have access to light, to exterior light. Building 60 is the research tower. This is a building with a footprint of about 7,000 square feet, and it's 7 stories over a 1-story base. It's about 70,000 square feet. It contained offices, conference areas on the first floor, and primarily lab space on the upper floors 2 through 6, and executive suites on the top floor. So this building does have windows on 2 facades, and 2 facades essentially don't have windows. And the building is still filled with an extensive amount of research equipment, cabinetry, utilities, specialized ventilation for its research and lab, former research and lab functions. And Building 60, the Research Foundation, this is from 1961 with later renovations. It's about 50,000 square feet, primarily a research facility with highly specialized laboratory space. Space is a surgical center, conference rooms, and other spaces specifically associated with the lab facilities. And here you can again see just how specifically the interiors are designed and the layout and laid out for the research and laboratory functions. So again, very utilitarian and specifically designed for those functions. This facade, you can see, no windows, and the interior walls, like many of the buildings, are painted concrete masonry units and painted concrete floors. Building 60 is a little bit later construction, 1976, and connected the research tower and the research foundation. It's 1 story, and it's really corridor space and with some offices. And is that it? The fitness center. Okay, the fitness center, this is one of the later buildings, 1983, one-story standalone building, about 10,600 square feet, contains a gym, exercise spaces, well designed for those functions, although again, very, you can see very utilitarian, and with very few windows or embellishments. There are a number of other structures that provide utility support for the former laboratory research and office functions. The water tower, the tank farm has 3 25,000-gallon fuel oil tanks, an electrical substation, all of which supported the provided required utilities for the other functions on the campus. Anything else?
So this slide shows the chart basically breaking down all of the floor area. As I said, it's roughly 700,000 square feet. It's 698 and 77 square feet. 60% is office and 40% was manufacturing. In addition to the building conditions, there is a documented history of contamination that's ongoing out on the site. There's an existing groundwater classification exception area, which is on this slide is the pink area, and that was approved by the DEP in 2014. In 1983, but they've been monitoring this site for a while. In 1983, there were 9 monitoring wells installed and sampled, and they began investigating the soil and surface water in 1984.
Sorry, Mr. Sullivan, just to clarify, the pink area, though, carries well outside of this property, carries over into the existing SJP, is that correct?
That's correct. The existing property to the east also has the classification exception area on it.
Thank you.
The yellow is the study area boundary, just for anybody looking at that exhibit. So the DEP is overseeing the investigation and remediation at this site for over 30 years. There's no further action for all the soil issues, but the groundwater contamination monitoring goes on. An application was made to the DEP in 2023 to reduce the area of the CEA, the classification exception area, based on test sampling that the groundwater is getting better. The results of that are not, I don't believe it's been approved yet.
Mr. President, just a question, a clarification. On your map, you do not show the Bridgewater Raritan Regional High School property as being designated in the contamination area. It has not and is not in that area?
Not based on the information we got from the state.
Okay, because that was raised as a concern during the planning board hearing. I just want to make sure that it's acknowledged and known as part of the record, as part of those witnessing this proceeding, that the high school property is not impacted.
The various contamination is really chlorinated hydrocarbons is what they're looking for out there. And some of this relates to when they cleaned manufactured devices, needles, cleaning metals. So there are a series of those sorts of chemicals out there. In addition, John took you through the buildings in terms of their function and their layout and what their character is, but we've got reports documenting contamination in many of the buildings out here. And the contamination is in terms of lead. We've got building 5, building 10, building 25, building 30, building 40, building 50, building 60, all with lead identified. And the fitness center has lead identified that will require remediation during demolition. In addition, there's asbestos within the buildings documented, and this is within building 10, within building 30, within building 50, and within building 60. PCBs were also identified, and they're not good for you either. And it's generally been identified within caulk and some other materials that were within the building. So, and the
The owner has gotten cost estimates for this, and based on the groundwater and the asbestos alone, the costs for remediation are over $4 million. The costs for mitigation and remediation of the PCBs and lead are not known at this time. We do not have any information on that, but it's a substantial cost.
Just to clarify, the lead and the asbestos and the PCPs, today, those buildings as they stand, it's not an issue. It's only when you go to renovate or demolish those buildings and it becomes airborne. Is that correct, or?
I believe that's the case. I don't know that any of the asbestos is friable, and I don't know the extent to which the PCBs are able to be absorbed by anybody without actually taking them apart.
Okay.
Mr. Sullivan, at what degree is the previous owner responsible for remediation of any groundwater issue is?
I don't know all the details of the requirements, but my understanding is, I don't know the details, is that both the previous owner and the current owner have an environmental, an LSRP working at the site. So I believe they both have some responsibility. So let me talk a little bit about the criteria that the Ethicon campus would fit. Criterion B of the redevelopment statute says that you meet the criteria for a redevelopment area if the situation is that there's a discontinuance of the use of a building or buildings previously used for commercial, retail, shopping malls, or plazas, office parks, manufacturing, or industrial purposes. And that is my opinion, and that's the opinion that I gave to the planning board, and that is why the planning board recommended that this be deemed an area in need of redevelopment. We've talked a lot about the discontinuance of this. It started in 1956. It was expanded over several decades as an evolution to fit the program and the business model for Ethicon and Johnson & Johnson. It was used for more than 60 years, but in September 2015, the manufacturing operation stopped, which was approximately 40% of the building areas. 60% of the campus continued to be used for offices until August of 2022. That's when the employees were relocated to a new facility. There was a point where there was swing space used here to move employees back while other space was being finished in another location, but now they are gone, and they've been gone for at least a year, year and a half. 50 employees remain on site, specifically for security and maintenance of the facility to ensure that it's not becoming a moldering mess, but it is not occupied at this time in any meaningful way. It was sold in February 2024. It was also my opinion that I gave to the planning board, and I believe the planning board agreed with, that this is an obsolescent facility. As we've talked about the specialized nature of this campus, 700,000 square feet dedicated to all the functions for this business model that went from office uses to research and development and testing and manufacturing. As John talked about, they're very specialized. These are not typical floor plates. There's some office buildings on this site that have floor plates that might be close to what an office might be today, but they're cobbled together and they're strung together in these large connected building masses. But then we have very large windowless floor plates, which could not easily be retrofitted for any particular permitted use. Warehousing is not permitted here, right? So you can't just go in and do warehousing here. How do you get light into these buildings? How do you remove the guts that were there for the manufacturing and the loading? There are some very strong industrial internal crane and lifting devices and other systems in here. So it's not like it could be readily adapted, and it's an enormous complex. And so, in my opinion, it's obsolete for what it was. And it's not just because Ethicon moved out. It would be very hard to repurpose.
There's a reason Ethicon chose to consolidate in the Raritan campus as opposed to the Bridgewater campus. Is that?
I can only presume based
Yeah.
on this. And there's a, there's an assessment, the property assessment's $51 million here. The annual tax bill for Ethicon is over $900,000 a year for that site. But the annual cost of maintaining it, including property taxes, is over $3 million a year. So this property needs to get up on its feet. And that's what the redevelopment law is for, to get properties moving, get them paying taxes, get it redeveloped in a way that makes it a productive property within the framework of a town, in this case, Bridgewater. Absent redevelopment and the tools that are afforded through the redevelopment statute, it was my opinion that ultimately you might be seeing tax appeals or things like that that would really reduce the tax revenue that we would get from this. Alternatively, redevelopment of a meaningful way could actually increase your tax revenues here beyond what they should be just with Ethicon. So the redevelopment statute has some tools that you can use, and that's the opinion I gave to the planning board. I want to talk a little bit about the small lot, the 2.4 acre lot that's across Country Club Lane. That fits criterion C, in my opinion, and that's what we said in our report and what I testified to at the planning board. And that is because it is unimproved vacant land that has remained so for a period of 10 years prior to the adoption of the resolution directing the planning board to study it, and that by reason of its topography and nature of the soil is not likely to be developed. And so we went back and we looked at aerials. We have an aerial from 2012, which shows it's a vacant property. When we have aerial imagery from 2023, it's vacant. We went to the site, it is vacant. But it's vacant, and the characteristics of the site, and we've talked about this before, this is a wetland map of the site. There was a wetland delineation done, and the dark area, the gray area, dark gray area in the site indicates where freshwater wetlands are. And of course, there are wetland transition areas in there. It's about a third of the site that's constrained by wetlands and wetland transition areas. Wetlands are a surrogate for topography that doesn't drain, so it's an issue of topography, and hydric soils, which is the nature of the soil. So that's how criterion C is applicable here. It's an odd-shaped lot with frontage on Country Club Lane and Route 22, and ultimately, to access this site, you would prefer to access it from Country Club Lane, which would require you to go through the wetlands, which would add expense to that. And so through the redevelopment, the tools of the redevelopment statute affords may be able to facilitate getting access to that site and making it productive. It's got no improvement value whatsoever. It's assessed for a land value of about $350,000. So it was my opinion that also fits the criteria. Finally, criterion H is a criterion that the statute continues to keep, and this says that the designation of the delineated area, the redevelopment area, is consistent with smart growth planning principles adopted pursuant to law or regulation. The state plan was adopted pursuant to the State Planning Act, which was a law. It is the state's roadmap for smart growth, even though it doesn't use that term in it. And within the state plan, there are several planning areas, starting with the most planning area 1, which is where the state envisions most of the growth and infrastructure in the state to be developed, to planning area 4B or 5, which are the most environmentally sensitive planning areas where the state envisions minimal development, if any, and no infrastructure investment. We are in planning area 1, the metropolitan planning area here, which is highly favored for redevelopment, development, and the investment in infrastructure and other things. So in my opinion, the study area and the properties meet criterion H within the redevelopment and housing law. And that's really the summary of the investigation. Those were the facts and the evidence and the conclusions that were presented to the planning board as a basis for their recommendation to you to designate this study area as an area in need of redevelopment.
Just question, I'm not sure if it's for you, just if we can talk briefly before we open up to questions, the rest of the council. procedurally, tonight, what we're looking at is saying yes, or making a decision on accepting the recommendation from the planning board that the site is in need of redevelopment. We are not defining tonight what that redevelopment is. As I understand the process, that will then go back to the planning board, who will determine how best that property can be utilized, and then that will come back to this governing body.
That's exactly right. Ultimately, the redevelopment plan is really a hybrid of master plan and zoning ordinance, but it's adopted as a zoning ordinance.
This is just simply saying that this property meets the definition of an area in need of redevelopment, or not.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Mr. President, a few comments. First of all, thank you for that thorough presentation, which I've now heard twice.
My apologies.
No. Again, this is critically important, but for the record, if you need to do it a third time, I think I could step in if I have to. A very thorough report. I do want to provide a little bit of commentary. I know I may have stated this at the last meeting with what occurred at the planning board meeting, because I think it bears noting that this is and will continue to be an open and transparent process through publicly available documents, through opportunities for the public to participate in this process, including open public comment. That did occur at the planning board. That occurred by multiple members of the public at the planning board. In some cases, comments were on point related to the criteria in the report. In other cases, comments were made about other aspects of the property, including but not limited to environment and certain other things. I'm just looking at Mr. Pappas to confirm that I'm accurate in how I've portrayed that. Now, one thing that came up during the planning board meeting, again, that meeting is recorded, so anybody could watch it, but I'll save you the time of sitting through a 5-hour recording by mentioning one area in particular that came up, and it questioned, essentially questioned the validity of this report because it was paid for through an escrow that was funded with the Township of Bridgewater by the current owner of the property. So the argument was made, or at least the ground was laid, that this report is potentially fruit from a poison tree. No, those were not the words used; those are mine. And then the response to that is, well, if that's going to be the case, then development essentially can never occur in the state of New Jersey, because by its nature, an individual will likely acquire a piece of property, likely on speculation, no guarantees, of course, but then have an interest in doing something different with that property. Something else has to be done with this property because there is no utility for the way it exists right now. But that was a portion of the 4 or 5 hour hearing. So I provide that as a public service to everyone. You don't have to. You can watch the tape if you want, but now you don't have to. That certainly may come up moving forward. But the point was very clearly made that there is precedent in New Jersey, lengthy precedent for redevelopment reports such as this to be paid via escrow, ultimately funded by the property owner. And if that is called into question as a mechanism, then that calls into question the validity of any development that has happened in the past, as well as the likelihood of any development anywhere moving forward. So, just wanted to provide that context and state that I believe that what is before us today is to either confirm or not confirm the findings of this report. And again, some of the other issues that have been raised, while certainly relevant, environmental concerns, any traffic and other things that might be created by whatever happens here, all those are relevant to the property. But if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Mr. Corsini can confirm, right now our decision is, does this report support the finding that this is an area in need of redevelopment?
Mr. Sullivan just confirmed that.
Okay.
This is not There's no shovel going in the ground tomorrow. There's probably no shovel going in the ground for quite some time. So, is there any other comments or questions from the council?
Mr. President, Mr. Llewellyn is here, and I'm wondering if we might just give him a moment to make some comments. He provided a perspective at the planning board hearing that was helpful, and I think it would be beneficial to the council.
Thank you, Mike. And good evening. I prepared a number of slides, and do you have them? Do we have them? We can run through those real quick.
Or if you maybe just for the benefit of the members of the council and public who are not familiar with you, if you could just give a little your name and a background as to why you're up here speaking.
Yes, sir. My name is James Llewellyn. I'm a principal at Appalachia Hydrogeologic Environmental Consulting, LLC. We reside right here in Bridgewater, and basically I've been in the business for over 30 years, doing preliminary assessments, site investigations, remedial investigations, remedial actions. Most of my experience is with redevelopment and basically taking properties such as this and basically remediating these properties so that they can be put to better use.
Thank you. And your slides are up, so.
Okay, great. All right, next slide. All right, just a little bit of history here, and it will answer some questions that were already posed here by the council. Ethicon was purchased in 1954. Operations began in 1955, and it ceased in September 2020. Operations are such as the planner indicated. Basically, it was research development, manufactured needles, sutures, and other petroleum pharmaceutical products. From 72 to 1980s, they used a compound called PCE. It's tetrachloroethylene. People may know it better as they used to use it in dry cleaning. They used to use it, they still probably use it for brake cleaner. It's fabulous. But, however, it creates an issue. They used it for the needles. The needles had to be sterilized, so therefore they used this PCE to basically strip off the oil, which they had to use to basically create these long wires as a lubricant so that they wouldn't break. Basically what was happening is that the PCE, the virgin and the waste PCE was stored in above ground storage tanks near Building O. And unfortunately they leaked. And they leaked over a long period of time. And they created concentrations, not only in the soil, but in the groundwater. Ethicon has gone through the whole gamut of DEP process, site investigation process. They've done preliminary assessments. They've done site investigations, remedial investigations, and now they're doing the remediation. Bottom line is that they identified 38 historical areas of concern on the property, and as of now, 35 of them are complete. They're done. They submitted the report to the DEP reviewed it, and the DEP issued what's called a no further action determination, which simply means they're done. The majority of that had to do with soils, and that was done back in 1992 and 93. And then currently, every time there's a change in standards, they take a look at the new standards and they compare it to some of the data that was collected back then, and they basically compare it and determine whether it complies with the current standards. So we had 38 historic areas of concern, and 35 are done, which means 3 are remaining. And that is the groundwater issues at the site. And then just recently, they found 3 additional AOCs that they're addressing. They're back into the remedial investigation phase. But those 3 additional, they have to do with some storm sewers and outfalls, and they're dealing with different types of compounds like PAHs and metals. PAHs are like benzoate, pyrene, and whatnot. The bottom line is the responsible party, and that goes to the gentleman over here, is Ethicon. They are responsible for the cleanup.
I thought he was responsible for it.
He's our waste expert.
That's the way
He's,
it was.
He is our waste expert.
this time you'll have to actually wear the hazmat suit.
And if somebody purchased the properties, some of your attorneys up here understand joint and several liability, the new owner is going to have some responsibility as well. So there's people on the hook for this going forward. All right. That's the history. Let's go into the groundwater remediation. So now soils are done, right? That's part of the 35 AOCs. Now we have groundwater remediation. It's up on the board. Bottom line is on site. You have active remediation for the higher dissolved phase COC concentrations. There's a source area where it leaked. Those are higher concentrations. Those are dealt with. They have some building vapor mitigation systems under O and G. That was the larger building in the center portion of it. What that means is that the groundwater, this PCE is volatile. It percolates through the ground. It gets to the groundwater. It flows. It's soluble. That's why it's the number one contaminant in the state. Or I should say TCE is, but PCE is close behind. Bottom line is it flows. It goes under buildings. It volatilizes. It gets trapped underneath the buildings and then basically creates a hazard. So what you have to do is put in essentially a radon system. It's the same thing, same idea. It's PVC pipe. It goes under the building. It creates depressurization, and that way the vapors get captured before they get trapped under the building. Active groundwater remediation. They have been working at this since 1985, where they were doing the old pump and treat system. Put in some wells, they pumped contaminated water, they treated it, and then discharged it. That was in 1985 to 2004. Then they also did some dual phase extraction, which is essentially sucking the vapors from the soil. And then, of course, it strips off the groundwater and then gets collected and dealt with, put in carbon and whatnot. Today, they've switched over. They've shut those down, and basically they're doing enhanced reductive dechlorinization. They're addressing the source area. Okay, the soils are gone, but they still have contamination in the bedrock. So they're dealing with the source area, and they're dealing with the fugitive plume. They're doing it in both areas. They have 10 wells, injection wells in the source area, and they also have 17 wells along the property boundary, upgrading of Peters Brook. Enhanced bioremediation, believe it or not, they use molasses. Molasses provides the carbon that allows the microbes to chew on it, and they create anaerobic conditions, and then the other microbes can attack the PCE. All right, that's off-site. They want to basically transition to what's called monitored natural attenuation. That'll occur after they're done with the active remediation. What that simply means, leave it alone, monitor it, nature will take its course. Okay? A couple criteria for that. You got to remove the source area, which they're doing with the active remediation. You have to have decreasing concentrations over time. And then also you have to just do groundwater monitoring. And right now they have a plan in place that's going to be quarterly, semi-annually. There's some annually. Institutional control. They talked about the classification exception area. It was approved by DEP in 2014. It's a designated area. It's a notification for people, don't put wells in this area. Okay? The groundwater concentrations are above the standards. That's simply what that is. Since 2017, the groundwater plume has been stable. And just recently, as you indicated, the bottom line is that the CEA is being revisited or revised in 2022. And basically, we have a width 300, the length is 3,000, area is 440 acres, depth is 300 feet, and it's an indeterminate amount of time before it cleans up. The reason for that is they don't have the data yet to show the decreasing trend once they shut down the active remediation. All right? All right, enough of this boring talk. All right, let's go to the plume extent. Okay, if you look at this figure on the left-hand side, you have the baseline PCE concentrations, and that was 1998. Look at the red in the middle. That's the most concentrations. And then you see the plume moving to the southeast. And then 2021, it's the same plume, but it's significantly reduced, which means they're very successful in what they're doing. And these types of treatment methodologies, they work. I know they work because we use them as well. So if you look at the second one, which is, the right-hand side, you see that they have significantly reduced these concentrations. They essentially have a fugitive plume that's off this property, and then they have one that's closer to the source area. All right, the next. Now, one of the things that, that we talk about, go ahead for the next slide, is these maps are for DEP. It becomes very difficult to read these and, okay, the public would say, well, where is this plume? Is it close to my house or not? So what we did is we took this plume, we gave it some gave it some coordinates, and we basically attached it to a georeferenced map. So this just gives an indication to the public of where this actually is.
So the plume's not even on the Ethicon property?
Sorry?
It's not even on the Ethicon property?
Correct, it's just off. Now, it's just off, and if you look, I know that there were some concerned citizens around Country Club Road. It's not even close to that. There was a question here. Councilman Kirsch, who asked about the school. It's not near the school, you can see that. And then basically, we have the municipal building, and you can see that it stretches just off the property, SJP Properties, and it basically ends up at the intersection of 202
State Police Barracks.
and 22.
Yeah. That bottom,
Where all the accidents are, that's where the PC is.
the bottom right corner of that is actually the State Police Barracks.
Correct. That's it. That's where it is. So I think this needs to be emphasized with anybody that has questions about where this plume is. All right, and this will. There is. There's a sentinel well right at the end of that plume, that elongated plume. It's MW29, and it's called a sentinel well. And that sentinel well has slight concentrations, but they're not bad. And they petitioned the DEP and said, hey, do we need to go any further? The plume is shrinking. Can we just use MW29 as our sentinel well? Sentinel wells they're not supposed to have anything in it, no contamination. But the DEP came back in a letter and said, okay, well, since it's shrinking, which means it's getting smaller, it's mature. It's been there for a long time. So you're concerned about, it could be migrating, could end up in Somerville. No, that's not true. It's shrinking because the source is gone. If we went back to that figure that showed, the massive red that was over the site, and then, right, it progressed. Now that's not mature, that's migrating. Now that they've cut it off, it's starting to shrink.
Are the microbes at work to reduce that to the point of 0, let's say 10 years?
Yes, yes. They continue to add molasses. And the microbes are working, and it continues to decrease over time. I'll show you if you look, let's see if I have the next, yeah, sure, go to the next slide. So this slide shows the same plume from the Arcadis map, This is where we took it from and put it onto the bigger map so people understood where it actually was. If you look along Peters Brook, and that's in between the Ethicon site and the Plume, you can see a line of wells. And that's the treatment zone. So they've created somewhat of a barrier wall where they're injecting this molasses, and this molasses acts as a carbon source, allows the microbes to wake up and eat and chew this stuff. And so what happens is it cuts it off, as you can see. It's cut it off. So there's probably lingering concentrations on the property, but it's cut it off. So, and they will continue to do that. So dealing with the groundwater, they're in pretty good shape. Remediation of the existing buildings. You mentioned asbestos, you mentioned PCBs, you mentioned lead. The asbestos, yeah, it's in a number of buildings. They basically, I know Bridgewater has a code to clean up this stuff prior to them demoing the building. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I saw an asbestos abatement plan already written and on the record. So there are plans to abate this. And that's something that obviously the council needs to make sure that that occurs. PCBs, it was in 2 of 15 samples. Yes, it was in the caulk of some of the within the buildings. Is it a major concern? 2 of 15. Okay, we'll remove the caulk and throw it in, a bag, and it'll go off in a different direction than the other demo stuff. And then as far as lead, the lead was mainly lead paint. Okay, this is an older building, and there was lead paint. And they have gone through and done extensive testing, determining that paint for windowsills and doors and some walls, and all the samples are documented of where they were collected and what surfaces had lead and what surfaces didn't. So my guess is that that will be taken care of prior to demolition. Now, as far as, there's a couple things I just added, so we'll go very quickly through this. When you're doing demolition, you have dust and you have, maybe there's a concern about lead, and if the community, for extra, let's see, protection, but just feeling better about, okay, there's not an issue here. There's programs out there, it's called community air monitoring, that you can put in place to make sure that the community feels confident that what's being done is not impacting their properties or their health. And that's called air monitoring units. And we're doing this right now. We're in a landfill. You can see the houses in the distance. And basically these monitors are set up. They're set up between the workspace and the people's homes. There's a weather station that tells you which direction the wind is blowing, and then basically these stations are reading continuously. And if you go on to the next slide, there was a question during the planning board. Next slide. Keep going. There we go. There's the air monitoring stations. Next slide. Someone asked the question, well, when do we find out? When do you know that you're close? Well, if you look at this, we actually have our phones, and basically we get alerts of when we're getting close to that threshold. And when we're close to that threshold, if you go to the next slide, these are just the daily reports that we get at the end. But the last slide here, we send out the water truck, right, to knock down the dust. So we take care of it immediately, and that's recorded that we did take care of it. I think I've addressed the questions, and that's the end of the presentation. Any more questions?
Thank you, sir. Any questions, or is there anything else, Mr. Pappas, before we open up for questions here?
Just one question that you can hopefully guide us on, because this also came up at the planning board. A redevelopment of this site is a pathway toward getting this thing cleaned up, as compared to doing nothing and leaving it as it is, then there would be no environmental improvement, correct?
I can tell you from redeveloping any property is if you've got a system that's in place, there's ways of working around it. And you could do virtually anything with this
I
property.
think in fairness, Mr. Coote, your question is, are you talking about cleaning up the groundwater, or are you talking about cleaning up the asbestos and lead?
If someone is concerned, and I think we all are, about the environmental condition of this site, by moving forward with redevelopment, there are pathways to making this a clean site, a clean and safe site. If we do not proceed with redevelopment, and what sits there just sits there, dangers will just continue to lurk, correct?
I would say, I would agree with you that if you're redeveloping this property, there is going to be more motivation to clean up this as quickly as possible versus a vacant site that's just sitting there and potentially having someone say, well, it's a vacant site, I can take my time. I don't need to clean this up.
Doesn't the property owner, if they wish to do any type of construction project on this site at this point, would need to remediate the site? At this, whether or not it's in need of redevelopment, or whether they decide to go through the building permit and just try to build something on here, once the property is contaminated, doesn't the state DEP have regulations now that mandate that certain cleanups have to happen?
As long as you can prove that your redevelopment is not going to contravene the ongoing remediation, then they'll let you do pretty much anything.
The ongoing remediation, so there has to be ongoing remediation irrespective.
correct.
Right, that's my point. Okay.
That is. There has to be ongoing remediation. They're not going to stop it.
Right, and that process is going to happen irrespective. I mean, the state's going to have oversight over this property no matter what.
That's right.
Right, okay.
And the other thing I would say is that here's what's important about this that I noticed, and I don't know whether it was by mistake or they did it purposely, because we certainly do this purposely, and that is clean up the soils. Get the soils clean. It happens to be the source area. If you clean up the soils, now you can redevelop. You don't have to worry about the soils. The groundwater can be dealt with. That's down 30 feet. We can put in wells. Well, the wells that are there, injection wells.
All right, but the
If you leave
remediation.
the soil that's dirty, now when you're doing your footings and whatnot and going through the dirty soil, you got to take that to a different landfill or treat it or something like that. In this situation, the soils are clean.
Right. But the remediation issue, about the fact this property is contaminated, that's already happened, and the remediation is going to happen no matter what.
That's right.
Okay. So, although your testimony is extremely informative, and I appreciate you being here, the fact is that nothing is changing whether or not the property's in need of redevelopment or not. The site's going to be remediated because that's the ongoing process that it's going through now.
That is correct.
Okay. So, has anything been presented, this is more like going out to the planner, has anything been presented as to what is going to be on the site?
No.
And that's not part of your consideration? No. All right. I really don't have any questions for the planner. I have a comment, but no questions. So if you have questions.
Councilman Cardillo had a question.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I appreciate the presentation this evening, never realizing that the Ethicon site had these issues with contamination. But based on past history in Bridgewater, I'm thinking about the RCA site, which is now Wegmans, the Cyanamid site, which was a federal Superfund site, all had similar issues, and they're all they have been dealt with, or they're still ongoing, with benzene and other issues. So I feel I'm pleased to see what's being reported this evening as far as the ongoing remediation for this site. Whether we redevelop it or not, that work still has to be done. And I think the issue tonight is whether or not this site is deemed necessary for redevelopment, and I think that's where our focus should be.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we? All right.
I have a comment. Yeah. Are you ready to take action on it?
Well, what I was going to do was reread the resolution, just to clarify, since it's been some time this evening, and then see if there was a motion and a second, and we can have comments before we vote. Unless
Very
you
well.
want to comment now, feel free. Whichever you prefer.
Nope. You got the floor, Mr. Councilman.
All right. So the resolution is designating the property identified as Block 411, Lot 39, also known as 555 Route 22, and Block 408, Lot 67, located on the northwest corner of Route 22 and Country Club Road on the tax map of the Township of Bridgewater as an area in need of redevelopment, non-condemnation pursuant to New Jersey local redevelopment housing laws NJSA 40A:12A-1, etc. Do we have a motion? I have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Mr. Pedrosa, Councilman Pedrosa, you had some additional comments?
I did. I will support this resolution. I think I do agree the property is in need of redevelopment. And I also would like to note that although irrespective of that fact, I mean, the reality is it is in need of redevelopment, but also by placing it into redevelopment, it actually gives this governing body, I think, more control and gives the township more control over what goes on that site. And so there, it's actually, I think, a double win. Not only to win potentially, I guess, long-term for the owner, but also win for the township because of that control issue. I don't find the environmental issues to be really relevant at all because the property, whether it's in need of redevelopment or not, has these issues. They're ongoing issues. As the what do I call his name? But as the environmental expert said, the remediation is happening irrespective of redevelopment. So whether the property is deemed in need of redevelopment or not, the environmental remediation will continue as is. And frankly, so I'm not really moved by, I'm concerned about the issue, but I don't think it's relevant to the matter before us. And there is one thing I want to note. This isn't certainly my first rodeo with projects in need of redevelopment. And I want to make a note now on the record that I will, no matter what happens down the line, I want everyone to be aware, the property owner to be aware, the governing body to be aware that I will not support any apartments on the site. I will not support any mass-dense housing on the site, and that would be a deal breaker for me going down the line. So at this point, I'm okay with moving the project forward, but having experienced life through the Center of Excellence project and seeing how that developed, certainly it's, once bitten, twice shy. Certainly I'm a little concerned. I'm a little, it's certainly something that I want to make very clear from the onset. So having said that, I will support this. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your very thorough and professional presentation to all the witnesses that came here.
Mr. President, so I love that reference to Great White, band from the 80s. So that was, I really,
my age.
I like that a lot. I use that from time to time. I expressed my feelings in depth at the planning board, so I don't need to do it here. I think the report is thorough, and the conclusion is valid. I think that all the other issues and concerns that have been raised, while relevant in totality, are not the core focus here. What is the core and focus here is, does this property meet the definition of being an area in need of redevelopment? And I believe the answer is yes. The environmental questions, any traffic questions, exactly what's going to be built there, all very important questions to be answered in the future. The question for tonight, do I accept this designation? My answer, again, as I voted at the planning board, is yes.
Any other comments from this side of the dais?
I'm convinced it's the right decision on behalf of the township and the residents to move forward with this site and identify it as a need of redevelopment.
Councilman Cardillo, are you good?
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay.
Why don't we
I
act
will-
on it?
And just very briefly, we'll comment that I think, kind of echoing Councilman Pedrosa's comments, I think clearly the site is in need of redevelopment. I think, by declaring an area in need of redevelopment, we have a little more flexibility as far as negotiating and controlling what goes on in the site versus someone who wants to conform with existing zoning there. But I think, we have to be very careful as to what ultimately ends up at the site. But no other comments. I will ask for a roll call, please, on 12A.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Tring?
Yes. All right, 12B establishes the 2020.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, sure.
Thanks.
I'm just moving along now. 12B establishes the 2024 employee standard mileage reimbursement rate for approved township business as set by the Internal Revenue Service. This is just like in the unlikely event a township employee uses their personal vehicle, they would be reimbursed per IRS standards. Unless there's any other comments or concerns, I will entertain a motion on 12B.
I'll move it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any comments, concerns? Roll call, 12B.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Tring?
Yes. 12C is authorizing the dispersal of $49,705 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for renovations and repairs for 3 low and moderate income properties through the Bridgewater Housing Rehabilitation Program. These include properties on Walter Street, Brown Road, and Pearl Street. Any further comments or questions?
I have none, but I'll make a motion to introduce it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Unless there's any further comments or questions, I'll take a roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Tring?
Yes. 12D is amending Resolution 24-09-19-242, approving participation with the State of New Jersey in a Safe and Secure Communities Grant Program administered by the Office of the Attorney General, Department of Law and Public Safety to the amount of $45,150 and a matching expense of $273,278.16 for a total projected cost of $318,428.16. This was a grant that we previously voted on, but there was an issue with how FICA and Social Security taxes were calculated, so we've been asked to redo it.
Move 12D.
What's the money for?
It's a grant for traffic safety officers in the police department.
This is an expense that we would have no matter what?
Correct. We previously accepted this, but the matching dollar amount did not factor in FICA and Social Security tax, so the state required it to be redone. We have a motion. Did I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Tring?
Yes. 12E is a resolution authorizing the Township of Bridgewater to accept a sub-grant award in the amount of $10,000 for the federal fiscal year 2024, the Emergency Management Performance Grant, EMPG, or Emergency Management Agency Assistance, EMAA. This is something we've received for the last several years. I will just say, though, that this is not just simply a grant. We fill out some paperwork. There's a lot of work that is done by our Office of Emergency Management. I know Sergeant Edwards is here to make sure we are compliant with the terms of this grant every year. It is not given to every municipality in the county or in the state. We are one that has benefited from this. So I will gladly move 12E.
I'll second it.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Ring.
Yes. 12F is authorizing budget transfers for fiscal year 2024, appropriations in the amount of $549,304.37 in the current fund. I know it's that time of the year, but any further comments, Mr. Pappas?
No, we do not anticipate any other transfers at this time.
Okay.
Mr. President, there was a question from the audience about the source of these funds, streets and roads, salary and wage. For the sake of the record, can you provide guidance on why that's the source of so much of
Yes.
the transfer?
There were several retirements, and budgeted positions were vacant, and those funds had not been spent.
Okay, so
Sometimes the process to replace employees can take several months, and there's savings there.
And also a lower salary.
Yes, correct.
So this is a salary and wage line, and it's not in any way, shape, or form accurate to say, well, gee, why don't you just spend an extra $144,000 paving roads?
Correct, yeah, you can see it's streets and roads, S&W, which is salary and wage.
I just want to make sure that that's part of the record.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll move this unless that's already occurred.
Did it? All right,
Then
I'll second
move it.
If there's no other comments or questions, roll call on 12F.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Ring.
Yes. 12G is the cancellation of sewer capital bond ordinances in the amount of $348,787.27. These go back to several years ago. My understanding is the cancellation of these funds will then be used towards some capital purchases this year for 2024 for the sewer fund. But some of these go back as far as 2013. Anybody want to move it?
Well, I will definitely, having been into the system today, I will move 12G.
Okay.
Second.
If no other comments or questions, roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Ring.
Yes. 12H is authorizing the replacement of the retiree Medicare Advantage plan provided by Braven with the Medicare Supplement plan provided by the Hartford to provide supplemental health insurance to eligible retirees of the Township of Bridgewater for a total annual premium of $475,872 for the year 2025. This is simply transferring the provider for the Medicare side of it, one at a cost savings and two at a anticipated increased level of service. No other comments. I will move 12H.
I'll second. Go ahead, Howard.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
We pay health insurance for employees that are retired.
Yes.
Yes.
If they meet criteria.
Those that are eligible.
25 years of service. And Mrs. Madrid is here, and she's been here all night, and I'd hate to have her miss the opportunity to make any comments that she feels would be
No, I'm okay with it.
helpful.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, okay.
I guess
Okay.
I'll just confirm that this
I
is
have
a
a
cost
motion.
savings, correct?
Yes, the estimates for 2025 came in about $93,000 higher for the plan that we were on. We weren't really happy with that plan anyway, so we were happy to recommend a change from a customer service standpoint as well as a cost savings standpoint.
What is one of the changes from customer service standpoint?
Well, this is a supplemental Medicare plan. So this impacts only Medicare-eligible retirees, so those that are over the age of 65 and use Medicare as their primary health insurance. And then this covers the anything that Medicare does not cover. So the plan we have right now is a Medicare Advantage plan. We've been having trouble with that. Everything needs to be resubmitted to the supplemental company. They've been denying a bunch of things, giving people a hard time about it. So this is a supplemental plan. Approval is pretty much automatic. The claims are submitted directly from the doctor, from the doctor's office to this supplemental plan. The process should be a lot faster and easier for the retirees and for the HR office, who has had to get involved many times.
Very good, thank you.
Move 12H.
We already have a motion and a second.
I can just
How many employees or ex-employees are receiving this benefit?
I don't know offhand. I can get
Oh,
the.
bless you. Huh?
I don't know offhand. I can get
Oh.
the numbers for you.
Mr. Papachen?
One thing I just want to say, that this is the only change that we're recommending for the medical coverage. The next council meeting, we are going to have a few additional resolutions, which would be asking the council to consider, which would be renewal of Horizon and the remaining coverages, but this is the only proposed change. Thank you.
Find my closed. Got it.
Okay.
All right. No other comments? We'll take a roll call.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso?
Yes.
President Ring.
Yes. All right. Thank you. That is the resolutions. We do have a closed session tonight. Closed session for tonight. Be it resolved, Bridgewater Township Council, this body will now hold a closed meeting to discuss contract negotiations and public safety, police department contract negotiations, 1200 Route 22, Warren, and the yard waste site. It is my understanding.
One more. Planner.
I'm sorry, planner. And it is my understanding that we do not anticipate any action tonight, other than returning to the meeting and closing the meeting to the public. Do I have a motion for closed session?
I'll make
that motion.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we are in closed session. Okay, the door is open. I will take a motion to reopen the public meeting.
Motion to reopen?
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll see you at the Bramnick event.